pod bay doors.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Cinematic Traveler Podcast. I am your intrepid movie-exploring host, Chris, and on this episode, I will be bringing you my review for the latest action comedy film to hit movie theaters, and that is Novocaine, starring Jack Quaid and directed by Dan Burke and Robert Olson. And I have been looking forward to this movie ever since I saw the first trailer way back when, so we will find out if it has lived up to my expectations. But before we do, I do have to ask a favor of you. Whatever you're listening or watching this show on, somewhere on that screen there is a subscribe or follow button. If you could please click that, I would appreciate it, as it does help me and the show, but it also helps you. You won't miss any of my future episodes, and you can go back and listen to my previous amazing reviews and hear my sexy, sexy voice. Also, if you would like to share the show with your friends, family, annoying coworkers, I don't care. Just share it with somebody. Share it on your social media. You can also find me on social media. I am on Instagram at Cinematic Traveler Pod. I do have a Twitter and Blue Sky, but I'm hardly ever on there, so I wouldn't waste my time. I am on YouTube, so you can go watch me talk into this microphone. That one is at Cinematic Traveler Pod, and I have an email address, the Cinematic Traveler Pod. So you have a few ways to get in touch with me and follow the show. There, I got through all of that podcaster, YouTuber mumbo jumbo, quick, fast, and in a hurry, so we could dive into this episode. I hope you're doing well out there, my beloved listener. You should be getting this review, I would say Sunday or Monday, so we're rushing headlong into the week, pushing that boulder up the hill. But the weekend will be here again before you know it, and hopefully I can pass a little bit of the time, maybe just 20 or 30 minutes of your precious time while you're on the treadmill or hanging out at work or, I don't know, in traffic. It'll give you a little bit of something fun to listen to as we talk about Novocaine. Now, before we get into everything, I do have to over-explain a couple of things. I am going to give you a spoiler-free review as well as a spoiler-free plot synopsis. Now, in that plot synopsis, I have hidden two movie quotes with movies that share some DNA or run parallel to this film. If you can identify those movies and let me know through the various means that I have given you earlier in this episode, I will give you a point for each one that you get right. At the end of the month, I add up all the points. Whoever wins gets to pick a movie for me to review next month. How exciting is that? Come on. How many other podcasters out there are giving you that sort of control on their show? And I mean, I just did Plan 9 from Outer Space, so I am willing to take a bullet for a lot of these reviews. So come on and play. If this is your first time or you don't listen to the show very often, you could just play for fun and let me know you're out there. It does get a little lonely sitting behind my fort of blankets, so it's always good to hear from anybody. So play along. I know it seems a little uncool, but isn't that the best time of the week? And that is to be uncool with Chris. So let's get into Novocaine. As I mentioned, this is directed by Dan Burke and Robert Olson, who I have seen one of their other films entitled Villains. That was from a few years ago. That was pretty good if I remember right. Pretty entertaining. Hopefully Novocaine will live up to that standard they have set for me watching their one movie. It's a high bar that they have to reach. So with Novocaine, we open the film by meeting Nate, played by Jack Quaid, an assistant manager at a bank with a rare genetic disorder that causes him to not feel physical pain. Now, because of this, Nate is forced to live a safe, guarded life, as things like eating, sharp table corners, even going to the bathroom could cause him serious damage. Well, it seems Nate has developed a crush on his co-worker Sherry, played by Amber Midthunder, and she is a bit bold and asks our shy protagonist out on a date that goes extremely well. Just as Nate's love life begins to take off, the bank is robbed and Sherry is taken hostage. Nate is forced to make a decision to either play it safe and let the cops handle finding her, or to use his disorder to his advantage and track down Sherry's kidnappers. Well, Nate thinks about this and asks himself something like, I didn't ask to be super, and I'm no hero. But when you find your worst enemy is after your best girl, the time has come to be a fucking superhero. And Nate decides to risk all for his love. He calls his best friend Roscoe, played by Jacob Batalon, and tells him something like, welcome to the party, pal, hint, hint. And the pair follow clues that Nate has found in a violent fashion to try to find Sherry before it's too late. Now, will Nate be able to harness his inner Hugh Jackman and absorb all of this damage he has taken to save Sherry, or will the villains make Nate feel the worst kind of pain? Heartbreak. Aw, aw, that was poetic. Well, I won't answer those questions and spoil this movie for you, but I will give you the best review for Novocaine in all of the podcaster YouTuber universe, nay, in all of the universe. Now, if this is the first time you have listened or watched the show, I do break my reviews down into three segments: the good, the bad, and the nitpicky. The good are the things that work for me in the movie. The bad, obviously, things that don't. And the nitpicky, these are things that are neither good, sometimes Hollywoodisms, or sometimes just silly things my brain picks up on that make me laugh. And as I am trying to do, I would like to make you laugh with this show, although I really don't know how well I'm succeeding. So if you could let me know again, give me some reviews or something. Just let me know you're out there and you like what I'm doing here. So let's dive into the good of Novocaine.
Sounds pleasant.
I am going to start out with the cast. I think Jack Quaid, obviously he's the hero of this movie, but he does carry it. He's a very charming actor. I will say, with him and one of the other actors, they're borderline starting to get typecast, but he does the nice guy who's kind of shy and nerdy and dweeby character very well. He does that on The Boys. Seems like just about everything he's in, he plays sort of the nice guy boyfriend that maybe has a hidden secret here and there. Same kind of thing here. I will say I like the way he sets up his condition early in the film. He has all these little tricks that he does. Like he has this little thing that stops the hot water from getting too hot. And he has to make all of his meals. He like grinds them up in a shake because he doesn't want to eat, because he doesn't know if he's chewing his tongue off or anything like that. Oh God, what a horrible, horrible condition that would be. So I really do like how he plays with that. He's very careful when he's driving and stuff like that. So again, he does that dweeby nice guy very well. He's got a lot of charm and charisma. He's got a lot of good chemistry with Amber Midthunder. I think the pair of them work very well together. She is a bit more forward than he is, and she gives him the signs of her attraction to them. And when he still struggles with it, she just basically comes forward and takes him out on this date and shows him a good time and lets him take his guard down a little bit. She stands up for him against some bullies and stuff like that. So I really do like the pairing of the two. You do really buy into it, even though it's a bit of a quick, rushed setup, because obviously it is. That's not the story of the movie. We just need that connection in order to have a reason for our hero to go after her. And they do a good job with that as far as their performances is. You buy in the fact that these two people would be attracted to each other and they would connect on levels, because Sherry has her own issues that you make her life complicated as well. So yeah, it's a good little performance between the two of them. I do like Jack Quaid as an actor. I just wish maybe his next movie or something he might try. Although I don't know what he would play. It's not like he's going to play, Conan the Barbarian or something. Just something a little different maybe in his next movie. But yeah, I really do like him and Amber Mid Thunder together. She does a great job. She was in Prey. I think that was a fun take on the Predator universe. So she continues that here. She's a good little actress. Also, the other actor who plays Roscoe, Jacob Batalon, you know him as Spider-Man's sidekick in the new MCU universe as well. That's sort of the same character he's playing here. As I mentioned with Jack Quaid, it feels like he's kind of falling into that sidekick character range, but he pulls it off well. Again, they have good chemistry, good comedic timing with each other, and he injects some fun as this outsider into this world, having to deal with all the shit that basically Nate has drug him into with these villains and all these chases, and cops are coming after him and everybody's shooting, and he's just this average dude that's just pulled into it, and he's trying to react to everything that in a way you would naturally think someone would. So I think for the three main leads, they all work together very well, and they bring a lot of charm, a lot of chemistry, and a lot of fun to the movie. You could tell they know exactly what kind of movie this is, and they're playing into that, and that does help gloss over some of the issues that we'll get to later. My next positive for the movie is the action, the direction. I think they do a very good job with that. There are different set pieces as Nate is trying to piece together clues and follow leads and all that fun stuff. You've seen really, I think, all of them in the trailers. There's a a fight in the kitchen that he has, which leads to a fight in a tattoo parlor that gets pretty brutal. And then there's this booby trapped house that we'll get to momentarily that he has to deal with another bad guy before he finally gets to final boss, basically like a video game. But each set piece has its own unique fighting rhythm to it, its own ways for Nate to have to overcome these villains, because he's not a fighter and he's not this brooding man who knows what he's doing. He's just trying to have to either outthink these bigger fighters or use basically the fact that he can't feel any pain to his advantage so he can maybe get the upper hand on these people so he can get to Sherry. So I think those action pieces work very well. They keep you entertained. They're timed very well in the movie. You don't really get bored. You get the initial setup with the romance, and then boom, you're quickly into the kidnapping, and Nate's on his way, bouncing from one set piece to the next. And they're all visually entertaining. They're gory, which, by the way, I am going to do. I know this isn't a horror movie, but I'm going to do a gore score for this movie because, yeah, we'll get to that after the review. But yeah, there are some moments in this movie that it gets extremely gory and graphic, and each setup seems to take it to the next level. So I think as far as the direction and especially the action side of it, I think they pull that off very well. They also do a good job with the comedy as it is dealing with Nate being in this situation, and obviously the physical comedy that comes from him having this disorder where he can't feel pain. But also, as I mentioned, with Roscoe, and there's two cops that are coming along, just them having to deal with this extraordinary situation and the comedy that comes from that. So again, I think there's a very good blending of the action and comedy for what this movie is, and it knows exactly what it is. If you've seen the trailer, that's what this movie is. It doesn't try to be anything bigger than that, and I appreciate that. It knew what it was going into the movie. That always makes it a lot easier to watch this type of film with some of the stuff that gets a bit absurd. And having said that it knows what it is, I appreciate that they had a premise for this movie that was unique. You know, you got this guy who can't feel pain, and now he is forced into this situation where he's going to have to deal with a lot of pain and getting shot and stabbed and punched and kicked around. And they don't hold back on that premise, which is nice. I would say this more for horror movies, but it seems like lately a lot of horror movies will have a really cool premise and they don't do anything with it. And as many of those as I watch, it gets disappointing to see a movie like that where you're like, oh, this is really smart. I wish they'd do more with it. Well, this one, they're like, okay, this is fun. We're going balls to the wall on this thing. And they don't hold back. As I mentioned, they get gory, they get over the top. Poor Nate, and I'm not putting this in the negative. I thought about it, but yeah, there are plenty of points in this movie he should have been dead. I don't care if he couldn't feel pain or not for the amount of stuff that he has gone through. But it's fun in the regard that they know how to use it. As I mentioned, I talked about this house that's set up with a bunch of booby traps. It's one of the villains' houses. And there's really some slapstick, goofy Looney Tunes comedy that comes from that, with him just getting like you see in the preview, there's a spiked ball that hits in the back. It's like, what the fuck is that? And all these traps that he has to set off, and he's like, oh, of course, this is this trap. Of course, naturally it would be like that. And Jack Quaid, he sells it all very well, but the movie is smart enough to lean into the goofiness of all of this. Like I said, the Looney Tunes moments in this movie. And my final positive of the film, it's less than 2 hours. I think it's a little over an hour and a half, so it moves right along. As I mentioned, it's paced perfectly. I never got bored. Well, except I'll get to something in the negative that kind of got to me. But for the most part, as the movie's going along, I never got disinterested. They time the action stuff out well enough. They give you moments to where Nate has to slow down a little bit so you can catch your breath before you see the next gory, goofy thing when he gets to the next building that he has to find somebody in. So I think, again, it moves along at a brisk pace. It's smart enough to steer into what it is. It knows what it is. It understands that this is goofy. They are winking at you with this movie to let you know they're in on the joke, but not so much that it's distracting. You know, they know the line to cross. And again, you've got some enjoyable performances from the main leads, especially Jack Quaid. He's got a lot of charm and personality, so he can carry these. I mean, god dang. When you're Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan's kid, you're going to be blessed with some charm and some charisma. There's no way around it. You have won the DNA betting pool if you are their kid. So let's go ahead and move into the bad or the negative of Novocaine.
Uh-oh, I don't like the sound of that.
And as much as this movie knows what it is, and again, it's something you're not going to take seriously. It knows you're not going to take seriously. You're not supposed to take it seriously. It's just a fun movie. I can't let some things slide. A lot of it I'll let slide, but it does get a bit tropey. You have villains that are just sort of one note bad guy villains. In fact, the one villain, I think he probably has the same condition as Nate, because it seems by the end of the movie, he has absorbed a lot of damage as well. I'm like, is this guy ever going to die? But, there's a lot of cliche things with the cops chasing after him. We're always like a step behind. And there's some conveniences with him finding things and getting to them. And, you got to kind of overlook the fact that, yes, Nate would have died very early on in this movie. Also, some of the dialogue gets a bit clunky. There's one line that I had to roll my eyes at, and it involves the booby trap house, because you don't know that's what that house is. But one of the bad guys is talking to the other bad guys, and they're like, "You mean his house that he spends all day booby trapping things?" And then they cut to the house. You're like, "Oh God, you really didn't have to do that." So yeah, some of it's a little clunky, a little, okay, we got to get to the next thing. So how do we do that? All right, we'll write a dumb line, or we'll have a scene that just everything falls into place so Nate can get there. And again, yeah, these are negatives, but I know what this movie is, so I'm not gonna like, oh my God, how horrible! How could you be like that? It is what it is. This is one of those good movies. They used to do this a lot back when I was young. You could have a movie like this where, yeah, okay, this doesn't make sense, or this is cheesy or whatever, but you're having fun. And that's kind of what this movie is. I will say another negative is some of the tone in this movie is a bit off, especially when it comes to Nate and his, I don't know what you call it, disorder or ability. I don't know what you would call it, but yeah, there's some times where it's played up for comedy, and then there's some times where it's supposed to be really gruesome and hardcore, and you're like, oh God, that's awful, and you look away. There were times I had to look away from the screen. So some of that gets a bit odd in places in the movie. Again, not enough to distract me, but there were times where I was like, okay, am I supposed to be laughing at this, or am I supposed to be cringing like I am? And my final negative for the film, I will say, even though it's less than 2 hours, I think the end of the movie goes on a little too long. I think I talked about this in my Mickey 17 review. It's something Hollywood seems to have an issue with, is we can't just get an ending and it be over and then we can move on. And this kind of falls back into the action movie tropes, because you have people who you think are dead but are not dead, and then chases that go on too long. And I was just, by the end, I was like, okay, let's just get there. We know the situation. Let's get the hero to win and save the day and ride off into the sunset. So really the only big negatives I could find in this movie. Let's go ahead and roll into the nitpicky of Novocaine.
Yeah, it's going to be fun on the bun.
And again, these are things that are neither good nor bad, just Hollywoodisms or weird, silly things that I see in these movies that make me laugh. I will say the first thing that popped up was very early on in the movie. I think the very first scene, there's an alarm clock that goes off, and Nate turns it off and gets right out of bed and goes on about his day. And I have to ask anyone out there, how do you do that? How do you set the alarm for a time, and then when the alarm goes off, you instantly get out of bed? I have to hit the snooze button about 3 times before I'm ready to get out of bed. It's really the dumbest thing in the world, because I have to set my alarm like 30 minutes ahead of when I really should get up, just because I'm going to hit that snooze button about 3 more times. And I don't know why I do it. Am I the only one that does it? I doubt it. But I don't understand how, when it goes off, you can just pop right out of bed. I'll never understand. I know some of you could do that, and I don't know what that is in your DNA, what genetic disorder you have, but I have not been graced with it, because I will hit that snooze button as many times as possible before I have to get out of bed. Maybe because I am dreading going to my job. So if you would all follow and subscribe and share the show, it would grow, and then I could do this instead of really work. And who wants to do work? My next nitpick for the film, and this one I could relate to in the movie, and it felt painful. As I was sitting in the movie theater all by myself for I think the third time out of the last 5 movies I've seen, I have been in a movie theater all by myself, which is crazy. As I mentioned, Nate is a bit shy, maybe an introvert, and he's not very well versed in picking up on the clues that Sherry is dishing out, that she is attracted to him. And I could not help but relate to that. A hair flip is not working for me, ladies. I mean, if a woman walks up to me and says, "Hey, I'd like to go out with you," inside my brain, I will go, I don't know. Maybe she might be interested in me, but I'm not sure. I need a little bit more. I need like spotlight shining, alarms going off. I need someone to hit me over the head with a hammer in order to pick up the side. So I could relate to Nate. And I will say I nitpicked this one because as I was sitting in that movie theater, once again by myself, it stung a little bit. It really did. I was like, damn, really? Did you have to point that out? Some of us just don't have game. That's what makes us really great podcasters because we have a lot of time to go see movies. And my final nitpick, this is something, and I know this is personal, but I do not like when you see characters in movies vomit. I don't like that they, nowadays, it seems like more and more over the last few years, they actually have the actors spit something up and do the whole, I cannot stand it. It makes me feel ill to my stomach. I can do the noises, and if it's off screen, and they fake it, that's fine. But when they actually show it, ugh, no, I can't. Ugh, that drives me crazy in movies. I have to look away. That was worse than some of the gore in this movie was when a point where a character vomits. I was like, oh god, no! You could have just done that off screen. I would have been fine with the noises. That's good. I don't know what it is, but I just do not like to see that. It's so goddamn gross. That's probably what it is. So that wraps up our nitpicking. Now, before I get into my overall thoughts, I will give you a gore score. As I mentioned, it's not a horror movie, but this movie does get very bloody, very gory. There are moments, like I said, I'm a gore hound, but I had to look away. So I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5 on the gore score. Be warned, there are going to be some moments and some things that happen to Nate and stuff that he has to go through. Yeah, oh yeah, you will look away from the screen and you will tighten your sphincter at some of the things that are done to this poor hero of this story, all in the name of love. It's not worth it, Nate. It's not worth it. So overall, if you couldn't tell, I had a real good time with Novocaine. I would recommend going to see it in the movie theater. It's a unique, original idea. You got some charismatic leads. Jack Quaid continues to be that type of actor that I enjoy watching. Amber Midthunder, I think she does a great job as well. They have great chemistry. The action scenes look good. The gore and the violence is over the top and goofy at points. There's some Looney Tune moments. It's fun. It knows exactly what it is. It's just a lighthearted, which is weird to say for a gory movie, but a lighthearted comedy with some action in it. You're going to be rooting for the heroes and you're going to hope he wins the day. So, yeah, I would recommend going to see it in the movie theaters. Although, as I mentioned, I was all alone in my movie theater, so I'm not sure how this movie's doing. Definitely watch it when it comes out on a streaming service, but, you should go out and support original films. That's why we do this, is because we want stuff that isn't sequels or MCU movies and superhero constantly coming at us. This is a unique, different take on things. So go watch it, enjoy it, support it. Just be warned, it is a bit graphic in a few places. So that wraps up my review for Novocaine. Now, before I go, this was something I introduced a couple episodes ago. I forgot last week. I will say last week, I was trying to do 2 episodes at once, so I was kind of hurrying through. So I forgot a few things, but this is a segment I want to do. I was going to do it every week. I might just do it from time to time. And this is just a shout out for some podcasts or YouTubers that I have discovered over the last week or so, and I want to recommend you go check them out. The first one is entitled Nerdy Up North. I watched them do an episode. They're on YouTube. They have a podcast. They also have another podcast. They do Monsters Up North that I want to check out. It's about horror movies and stuff like that. But I watched one where they did the Maltese Falcon. The host, Samantha, I think that was her name, and the other one was Chris. I remember that. That was the first time I think he had seen anything in the film noir genre. So, I mean, that's a good way to start out. So it was a lot of fun to hear them talk about that movie, throw out a lot of facts and interesting trivia, and give their overall thoughts as people not from that era and what they enjoyed about the movie. So definitely go check out Nerdy Up North. And a YouTuber that actually got in touch with me, and I checked out his show, Real Talk with Ryan, and real is spelled Reel. Again, Real Talk with Ryan. And he does new movie reviews. He does a bunch of them. Man, I thought I was working hard. This guy is putting out new reviews every time I turn around, but they're pretty short, 8 to 10 minutes long. And he gives you some interesting thoughts to take into account when you decide which movies you want to watch. So definitely go check out Real Talk with Ryan. So there shines my good deed in a weary world. As I recommend other podcasters and YouTubers. Aren't I kind? But that wraps up our adventure on this episode. And if you're still here, then I must have done something right. Again, if you could please follow the show, give me a rating, support the show, share it. I need all the help I can get right now. And I am relying on you, my beloved listener. I have faith in you to get the word out there for this show. Tell them to come watch. Tell them to come listen. Please. I know I'm begging, but things are getting desperate. But I do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen or watch my show. I tell everyone I know I've got the smartest and sexiest audience in all the podcast universe, and you never fail to live up to those high standards. And I almost forgot, come back towards the end of the week. I'll have another episode. We'll have our streaming surprise. I got a few movies I'm trying to decide over, so it should be pretty fun. So definitely come back now as you are traveling around on this blue and green ball, bouncing through the cosmos. I need you to do one thing for me. Go out and do that voodoo that you do so well.
All right, show's over. I'm tired.